Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the sponsor yield to a question?
He will yield.
Mr. Sponsor, has there been any input on the update to this legislation from the Kentucky Medical Association or the Kentucky Pediatric Society?
Gentleman Lincoln.
Not in this update of the legislation. This legislation is exactly language that was in a previous bill, 470, which we spent 2 hours debating on this floor, which they had input into that bill. So they have had input into the content of this bill, yes.
Gentleman Fayette.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I speak on the bill?
Yes, sir.
The sponsor alluded to the language in this legislation that mostly came from 470, which the medical community did have an opportunity to give input into, and every input I got from medical professionals in Lexington, which is home to our flagship public health care institution in the state of Kentucky, and most of the healthcare institutions in central Kentucky, they were unanimously opposed to this legislation. I would think if they had a reasonable opportunity, which none of us have had in this body to review this legislation, that they would continue to oppose this legislation as they had previously. The fact of the matter is that legislation such as this has been deemed as hate legislation by the Southern Poverty Law Center. And I worry what impact that will have on our medical healthcare institutions, our perception as a Commonwealth, and the future of our state as being a welcoming society. We are in an active transition in Kentucky in the way we tax people, and we're looking to go to a consumption-based tax. And a big piece of that consumption-based tax is attracting people into our state, getting them to move to Kentucky for various reasons. That includes economic impact, that includes tourism impact, and this legislation will be deterrents to all of them. I'm kind of like the lady from Jefferson. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about this bill. I'm not sure, with the rushed nature of how quickly this has came here, to have had an opportunity to thoroughly review every piece of this legislation. But since this is mostly 470, the facts from that debate are still relevant. Nearly half of LGBTQ individuals have seriously considered suicide. And that percentage is much, much higher with our transgender children. We've talked a lot in this body, and the gentleman from Perry last night quoted a Bible verse, and everybody knows here last time we had this debate I quoted many Bible verses. I'm not going to go down through all those again. But there's a lot of interpretations about what we should be focusing on and how we love each other and care for each other. And I try to live my life by the golden rule, is treating each other sincerely with love and loving your neighbor as yourself. And I just, for the life of me, cannot understand how we can vote for a bill like this and think that we're living by the golden rule and loving our neighbors as themselves, even though they may be a little different than you, or it makes you uncomfortable. This legislation is not about you. It's about them. And it's how it impacts these individuals. And, I quoted about the operation of that transgender child saving that lady's life. If this legislation causes one child in Kentucky to consider or to take their own lives, it's the wrong piece of legislation. And we know multiple studies say that's the case. We want to talk about being pro-life. This bill is not pro-life. This bill is an attack on a marginalized community that continues to get attacked by several people. And now you can add us to it. The physicians are worried about what this is going to do to their medical practice, and they're going to move out of state. We've heard from multiple residents and physicians who say they will not come to practice in this area of Kentucky because of this legislation. There's so many things hidden in this bill that we don't know them, but I would just urge my colleagues, when we are dealing with significant pieces of legislation such as this, to please slow down, read the legislation, consider other people in your decision-making process and how we are impacting the lives of so many people in the state of Kentucky right now today by voting for this bill and what it can do to all of us long term. I'll be voting no, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the lady from Jefferson 38 for